As a disclaimer, if you're anime only, you don't need to be worried about being spoiled by this video, as I'll only be drawing information from the first arc of The Promised Neverland. I will, however, talk about the anime and the manga of The Promised Neverland, but again, only encompassing what transpired in the first arc. So, if you ask me how I feel about Isabella, I'll tell you that she is my favorite character in the series by far, and I've read over 100 chapters of The Promised Neverland, which leads to the question of how. How did a character leave such a huge impression on me from only one arc, especially when she wasn't exactly the focal point? Well, let's get into the details of why I believe Mother Isabella is unmatched as a character in The Promised Neverland. Plain and simple, I love Isabella as a character and especially as a villain. But before I go deeper into that, I want to explain what I personally enjoy in a villain. Keep in mind, there is no correct way to write a villain, as there are more types of villains than you can count. There's the irredeemable evil for the sake of being evil villains like Frieza, the hero gone bad villains like Griffith, the sympathetic villains like Miriam. There are various kinds of villains that don't need to be confined to certain archetypes, but there are some overlapping traits that make a villain great in my eyes. I look at a couple of things to determine how I feel about a villain. First, their effectiveness. What I mean by this is, how does the villain in question fare when trying to carry out whatever they have planned? Do they have some success in anything they're doing, or are they virtually fodder in a sense? The more effective the villain, the higher I think about them. Second, I look at their impact or presence in the series. Does the villain have the power to control the series in a way that they can completely shift the tone? Lastly, the most basic factor for me is entertainment. Do I enjoy when the villain gets screen time or panel time, because they had to captivate me in some way, shape, or form. Of course, there's more to the makeup of a great villain, but that is my quick benchmark. As for Isabella, she fills my criteria for what makes a great villain and character in a multitude of ways, starting with her effectiveness. Isabella's mission is pretty straightforward. She must raise the Gracefield kids as their mother, produce smart children, and eventually ship them out to be eaten, which she was very competent at. Isabella is the Michael Jordan of the mothers. She was the person that exported the most high quality goods for the demons, so much so she earned a reputation and favorable treatment from her superior, Grandma. Now, of course, Isabella did eventually fail in her duties since an escape happened on her watch, but even so, the loss didn't damage her credibility. What it took to take down Isabella was not only genius tactics, but insane heroics, years of planning, and fucking Ray having plot convenience by not having childhood amnesia. And even then, Emma had to settle for a compromise since she initially wanted to save everyone, but couldn't, so Isabella's loss was mitigated to some extent. As for Isabella's impact, she is a villain that can totally dampen the atmosphere. No matter how much the main trio seemed to progress in their escape, there was always the looming fear of Isabella taking action. Isabella is cunning. In the chess game between her and the kids, it appeared that she always had the upper hand. Going to the early chapters of The Promised Neverland, one of Isabella's brilliant tricks was holding a baby in her arms at all times during the day, just to hinder Emma's objective of escaping with everyone, at least in the daytime. Isabella knew her kids well and anticipated how they would behave almost flawlessly, which she took advantage of. For example, one of Isabella's shrewdest moves was checking her pocket watch when one of the kids, Nayla, got lost in the forest. What was so smart about this move was Isabella doing it in plain sight. At the time, she didn't know who saw the truth of Gracefield, so she essentially gave out a veiled threat to the potential escapees. With this watch, I can track you at any time, so give up. It was the perfect mind game to play to get one of the kids flustered enough to reveal themselves. Along with that example, other moments where Isabella established her presence as a terror was when she stared at Emma to read a reaction, or when she called out Ray as a traitor, or my personal favorite, when she broke Emma's leg. Let's frame that scenario to better appreciate it. Isabella has become open with her villainy. She has identified Ray as a double agent, locked them in a room, and catches up with Emma and Norman in no time at all. Emma and Norman are desperate to climb over the wall to proceed with their plan, and seeing how Isabella is no longer standing idly by, they must climb the wall that day. It's now or never. As Norman and Emma split up to climb up the wall, despite Isabella confronting them, all that is heard is a snap. Norman hears it, Emma feels it, Isabella has done it. She cleanly breaks Emma's leg in one swift motion, putting Emma out of commission for 2 months and destroying the escape plan. And to make matters worse, Isabella has one more bombshell to drop. Norman is the next to be shipped out. And also realize Isabella did not improvise in the slightest. She had everything planned out. After breaking Emma's leg, she had bandages on hand. Why? Because she was already prepared to give her first aid. That moment, in my opinion, solidified Isabella as a damn good villain because of how much she shook our protagonist. Isabella flexed on them. She showed them when she gets serious, when she imposes her will, she could tarnish whatever witty plan the trio conjures up and evaporate their morale. Additionally, I think what adds to Isabella's image is her facade as a kind mother. Maybe before us readers knew about the real Isabella, we could have seen her as a warm and loving mother, but after the mask came off, Isabella's cheerful smiles became eerie grins. Since Isabella looks unassuming and most of the time joyful, when she subtly gives those certain looks, the malice that we know is inside her is highlighted by her contrasting mother persona. So, in short, when it comes to giving off the aura of a menacing villain, one that is genuinely fearsome, that is Isabella to a T. Piling on, Isabella has real depth to her character. Part of the reason for this was Isabella's motivations being properly fleshed out. Like the main trio, Isabella wants to survive, but in a world ruled by human-eating demons, that goal is not so easy. In Isabella's case, her options were narrowed down as soon as she discovered the secret of the farm: either become a snack for the demons or become a mother and subject kids to the same fate she steered clear from. Isabella chose the latter, and as much as people don't want to admit it, Isabella made a choice most would make. Even if you disagree with that take, I think what's important is that you can understand why Isabella is the way she is. No matter how Isabella is viewed in the eyes of others, given her circumstance, she is a character that can be empathized with. Switching gears, I've been going on about how Isabella is a great villain and whatnot, but the qualities she possesses that force you to question her role as a villain makes her a great character in my opinion. There is a side of Isabella that contradicts her status as a villain, proving her complexity. This might sound controversial, but Isabella is both a good villain and a great mother, and I say this acknowledging her hand in killing her children. To explain my stance, I think what's important to look at isn't how we as outsiders see the situation, but how Isabella sees it and lives in it. And no, a different perspective doesn't absolve Isabella of her transgressions, but it adds context and understanding to her state of affairs, which is pretty shitty. As I said before, Isabella is limited in what she can do because either she dies or she puts kids on the menu. So what she does as a compromise is treat her kids with the utmost care until they are shipped out. Up until that dreadful date, which is out of the control of Isabella, the kids are fed well, looked after, and treasure Isabella as their mother. As bad as this may sound, the kids had it good for most of their life. Had the kids lived in ignorance, none of the suffering that they experienced would have happened thanks to Isabella's support. Considering we live in a demon world, the standard of a mother has to be judged differently and cannot be compared to our world on what a good mother is, because the circumstances, the situation is totally different. So while Isabella shares culpability with cutting the lives of her children short, she worked to enrich their lives as much as she could. Now, this next point will sound out of place, but please bear with me. Like mother, like son, it's no coincidence that Isabella and Ray are similar in their outlook on life. As Crone once said, Ray is quick to give up, and that statement applies to Isabella and relates to my larger point. When Isabella uncovered the truth of the farm, she didn't have an optimistic person like Emma to give her hope. Isabella believed that her life and others had a cap determined by the demons, so in her eyes, she wholeheartedly thought that the children living up to age 12 was the most that they could hope for. Living a fruitful life outside of Gracefield didn't even come as a thought to Isabella, because you must remember, the outside world is thought to be ruled by demons, so it's the worst place to roam about. It wasn't until the kids escaped that Isabella thought, maybe it is possible for them to thrive outside the farm. And after that, she gave the kids her blessings in their escape, hoping that they could find light at the end of the tunnel. In addition to that, Isabella maneuvered in a way to ensure that her kids could live to maximum capacity. Look at how Isabella never shipped out any one of her kids prematurely despite their plan to escape. Part of that was because Isabella had confidence in her ability to control her kids, but another part of it was because she wanted her kids to live as long as she thought possible. Look at how Isabella groomed both Gilda and Emma to become mothers. Because Isabella truly cares for her kids, she helped Emma and Gilda extend their lifespan by directing them to the path of becoming a mother, since that was the best case scenario for her girls to live longer. Look at how Isabella let her kids escape at the end of the arc. Sure, Isabella did try to bring the kids back to the farm, but once they beat all odds and broke through the other side of the wall, she stopped her chase and didn't give the demons updates on their whereabouts. In conclusion, despite Isabella's evil deeds, she loves her children, and in her own words, she wished she could have loved them normally. However, that scenario was not possible due to the state of the world. So Isabella accepted that her time with her children was finite, but again, she did the best with what she had. So that is my perspective on Isabella's character and why I believe she is unrivaled among all the Promised Neverland characters. And with that, that pretty much ends my dissertation on Isabella. Let me know how you feel about Isabella as a character. The next The Promised Neverland video will be a video on Crone or Crone, however you want to say her name. That's already in the works. But guys, that's pretty much it for the video. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe. Satsuki the Savage, out.
Tasting your soul, you're not in control, just giving you goals. Scared of your past, the future is closed. The start is the end is a start. They both are the same, can't tell them apart. Nigga, that's cuz the intro was the outro.